up until now, we've only heard one side of the story with regards to Divin Mubama's contractual situation, and that side of the story has come from the club West Ham. So here's what we know so far, and that is what we've been told, which is that the contractual negotiations are really difficult. The player is asking for an extortionate amount of money, and it's looking unlikely that he'll sign. But the club are going to try. We even heard that David Sullivan is going to sort of parachute himself into the situation in the way that happened with Jarrod Bowen, because if you remember, there was a bit of a stalemate with Jarrod Bowen's contract. He's going to parachute himself in there, come in with a flying cape and whatnot, and sort it out. Now that's what we know, because that is very much the leaks that have come from the club, but it's only one side. Well, fortunately, we've managed to have a little bit of contact with somebody close to the player yesterday, and we managed to get the other side of it, which I think is really good. It's really important to play both sides. Certainly the information that's come through the club, I mean, some of it has come through this channel. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but you know, you get information, you've got to run with what you've got. But hopefully we've sort of read between the lines when reporting information, which is I've said all the way through this. David Moyes needs to give these players a chance, and I've often thought that it's not just about money. It's about opportunity, and I feel that's really important, and that's certainly what we've heard from the other side. We'll get to that in just a second, because yesterday I reported on the story that the club were going to now concentrate on Callum Marshall's contract, which I do believe, by the way, I do believe the club will want to tie Callum Marshall down to a new deal. The kid is exceptional, too good for Premier League 2, as I've said on numerous occasions. However, I do think that news was put out there, and as I said, I think I was probably used as a conduit to hand that news over to you guys, as a means to say, well, you know what, the negotiations with Divin Mubama have become a little bit too complicated at the moment, so we're going to go and deal with Callum Marshall to get him tied down. Actually, I think as a tactic, it's not a particularly bad thing to do. And as I mentioned yesterday, I think were West Ham to get the Marshall deal over the line, then it puts less pressure on the club to get Mubama signed up. Now, don't get me wrong, that they're both forwards, they're both goal scorers, they're left foot, really strong left foot on each player. But I do think they're different players, as can be seen by the fact that they've operated not just within the same team, but they've looked pretty damn good when they've played together as well. So I don't think it's as simple as just sign one and you don't need the other. However, I do think it is important to sort of state that we should be trying to negotiate with both. So we've had a little bit of contact with somebody close to the player yesterday, and they've sort of confirmed to us what we suspected, which is not all about money. Now, I mean, terms were never discussed, and, I think, you don't want to be putting that sort of stuff out there, and, it's a shame that the club shared the details of the contractual negotiation, and that certainly wasn't going to happen from the other side. But I think what is important to note here is that there's definitely a desire from the player to play for West Ham. And I think we have to show willing, and it's all very well showing willing in terms of, increasing the offer incrementally, bit by bit, but the club can only do so much. They can only offer so much money and do so much financial negotiations. If actually part of the negotiation is that the player wants to show what he can do for West Ham, then it becomes irrelevant, even if the club up their offer by another $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever the figure might be. If part of it is actually we do want better money and we want some inclusion in the first team, we want a chance to show what we can do, obviously the board can only do half of that. The rest of that comes down to David Moyes. And this is where I do think a bit of the onus and a bit of pressure comes onto David Moyes here. Now, don't get me wrong. I think if we take the scenario, let's say maybe we signed Scamacca last season and he's brilliant. He's scoring 20, 30 goals a season. And our backup striker is Antonio, who's doing really, really well on the bench. And if Antonio gets injured, Jarrod Bowen comes in and he's fantastic. I think it's easy then to look at it and say, well, it's hard for us to give him games. But that's not the case, is it? The fact of the matter is, Antonio doesn't score very many goals as a striker. Jarrod Bowen is having to, even in David Moyes' own terms, learn a new role. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Bowen is quite suited to the role when we're playing on the counter-attack. I don't think he's suited to the role when teams are sitting deep against us. Danny Ings has been signed. and he just can't operate within the system. And now we have a situation where some of the players are injured. I also want to add to that the fact that we have a huge number of fixtures compared to other clubs. And there are games like Bakatopola, Lincoln City, where actually Danny Ings gets to start those games. Not the only one, those not the only 2 games either. So there are opportunities there for young players to come in and to prove themselves and to show what they can do. But they're just not getting afforded that opportunity. And I think there's one thing a player leaving, and because it's not worked out, and because maybe he's not perhaps cut out for the highest level. And I'll use a good example. I'll use the example of Freddie Sears here. Freddie Sears has had a really good professional career. He probably wasn't ever a top-level Premier League striker. It was a good Championship striker. I think that's what Freddie Sears was. But he had his chance. At least we had the chance to see him playing first team over a number of games, and we found out he's level. So when a decision comes that actually we're not going to retain him, you think, okay, that's fine. Mubama doesn't have a chance. And I'm not saying he needs some sustained, elongated period of play. But maybe just 5 games? Maybe 5 games to show what he can do? 1 isn't enough, there's too much pressure. A couple of seconds at the end of the game isn't doing any good to anyone. He actually scored 2 goals last season, really. One chalked off, didn't he? Sort of unfairly, I thought was given, was not credited to him. And I thought he really deserved it. He looks decent, and he looks like he suits the system, definitely more than Danny Ings. So I think the pressure now comes on David Moyes, and I think if I was the board, I would be saying to him, look, David, we're trying to move to a slightly different model here. We're trying to bring players in. We're trying to lower the age of the squad. We are either the oldest or the second oldest, either us or Fulham. But we're 1 and 2 in terms of the oldest squad in the Premier League. And if I was the board, I'd be saying, look, we brought this director of football in. That's only one part of what we want to do. The other thing we want to do is perhaps maybe what Man City are doing, and what Chelsea are doing, which is bringing through youngsters and either playing them in our first team or playing them for a little bit. And then if we want to move them on, they're an asset. David Moyes is not really making assets, and I understand that Declan Rice would buck the trend there, but let's be honest. Declan Rice had played both under Slaven Bilic, I know it was only he gave him his debut, and then under Pellegrini before Moyes came in. So I think that's a hard one for Moyes to claim. If what we want to do is turn some of these youth players into assets, then I'd be saying to David Moyes, I need you to try and feature them, mate. Look, we've got a 25-man squad here. We got loads of players on the bench in every single game. Can we make sure? I'm going to allow you pick your team, David. Absolutely do. But you'd be doing us a massive favour if there could every game be a couple of academy players on the bench, and if we could maybe see what they can do. And I understand it's not David Moyes' priority, but David Moyes is happy enough to spend 400 odd million since he's been at West Ham. He's happy enough to take the millions of pounds in terms of his wages, and he's happy enough to the players that he does want for them to get mega wages. Well, that money's got to come from somewhere. And it's not just come from the Sky money, is it? It's not just coming from the European run. Sometimes you've got to be able to sell one. We just have sold a player. Sometimes you've got to generate a few funds from your academy. That academy costs, I understand it, £4 million a year to run. You need to have some return on it. And I just look at the Mubama situation now, and I'm really pleased that there's been some clarification on it, and that someone very close to the players turned around and said he does want to play football. And you're not going to get a better example and a better opportunity than now, because right now, we've got a few injuries, a few niggles, if you like. Now, Kudus may or may not be back. He's got a back injury. He's had a long-haul flight. May or may not be. Antonio may or may not be ready. And he's well, I think Antonio is not ready, but he may or may not come back earlier than we thought. And Jarrod Bowen, it might just be fluid on the knee, however you treat that, I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, he's available. I think what is clear, though, is that none of those players are 100% fit. So now's the opportunity. You've got all your forwards, or the players that you would consider to play as centre forwards, are carrying knocks or injuries. The player you have as your reserve striker ain't really hitting the back of the net. So now is the opportunity to try Mubama. It's here, and it's right now. And I think the decision-making point is pivotal. And I've not been told this, by the way. This is my summary of the situation. I think if I was Mubama and I was looking at the current situation, I was looking at my contract and I was thinking, okay, the club are negotiating with my representatives. So the amount of money is going to be negotiated at some point. So his job is to concentrate on the football. I think if it got to this weekend, bearing in mind the injury situation to our forward line will probably not get worse than this weekend. Bearing in mind we're going into a situation whereby we've got game after game after game, I think I'd be looking at it and thinking, do you know what? If I can't get in now, I'm not going to get in at all. I think if I didn't feature either this weekend on Saturday against Burnley or maybe on Thursday, if I didn't feature at all during either of those games, I think I would be just turning around to my agents. I think I'd be saying, just get me out. Just get me out. There is no opportunity here for me. None whatsoever. And I would probably agree that there isn't. And I wouldn't blame him for moving on. Now, I don't know whether Mubama goes on to become a good Premier League player or not, or whether he becomes like Freddie Sears, becomes a Championship player. I just don't know. Truth of the matter is, I'm not sure. But surely we don't want to let him go without finding out. Because the argument, when we do these videos, the argument always comes back, oh, well, name me one player that's gone on and left West Ham, and we have, and we knew, and I'm not going to go through the list again. There are plenty of players that have left West Ham and gone on to have good careers, and done so in the Premier League as well, by the way. But at least with players like Stanislas, at least with players like Freddie Sears, we got a chance to find out. They got their chance. Diangana, he got his chance. We got a chance to find out. And if you know what, if they go, then go away and they make it, then at least we tried. Or if they don't make it, at least we tried. But I think it would be really bad if, bearing in mind, we're in a bit of a pickle in terms of our striker situation at West Ham at the moment. We don't even give Mubama a try. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the situation. Just a reminder, later on today, myself and Gio will be uploading our non-football related podcast. We're doing it on this channel. So just to let you know, if you see it pop up and there's pictures of Christmas turkeys and Black Friday deals and stuff like that, we're taking the mickey out of it, basically. We're not trying to give you a Black Friday deal on anything. Then if all you're interested in this channel is football, don't click on that. I'd rather you don't click on it than for you to click on it and get upset because it's non-football. Anyway, hopefully those of you do click on it, enjoy it, and it's just something we do on a regular basis over on our Patreon channel. Every week we do a non-pinball podcast, which is it's a lot of mickey taking. There's a lot of moaning and groaning about a lot of stuff, actually, but we do have a really good laugh doing it. I'll catch you. I guess I'll catch you later on tonight. Game tomorrow, 3:00.